studying references. Whether you're just starting out or looking to refine your process, references and studying them can be the bridge between where you are and where you want to be as an artist. Hi, I'm May, and today I'll be sharing strategies, examples, and methods to make reference studies not only effective but also enjoyable. References are a powerful tool. Artists throughout history have relied on references to sharpen their skills. Using references helps you understand anatomy, form, perspective, lighting, and so much more. Additionally, it builds your observation skills, a skill that can make drawing anything easier. You could think of references as a map, and you as an artist are exploring different areas of that map by studying them. References guide you to your goals and help you navigate the areas you need to improve, whether that's understanding the subtle curvature of an elbow or the way light reflects off water. Let's start with determining a structure for reference studies. First, I'd like to present to you an exemplary order of topics to study through references. The topics here would be art fundamentals, so this would be suited for beginner artists especially, but any artist can benefit from studying these topics as well. When I initially studied the fundamentals for the first time, going through them over the course of a year, I used a similar order. However, I changed a few things and added some elements here based on what I learned since back then. Here is the order I would use to study the fundamentals. If I were a beginner, I would go through the topics I first mentioned in the order stated there, but this is just personal preference. What may work for me may not work as well for you, but I hope this served as nice inspiration. I, for example, find focusing on construction, then line work and defining contours, and afterwards all the value and color things helpful, but there are times where I start with a value and color blocken, then I do the construction and defining contours, and after this I go back to the values and colors, using the now defined contours as well as my initial value and color blocken. If it's your first time studying art, I would recommend going through the topics I mentioned. You can spend a week up to 3 months on each one, depending on how in depth you would like to learn about them and what you would like to draw. I myself would recommend using the order I mentioned, but that's only for myself because I now know what works well for me, so again, this may be vastly different for you. Next, I would like to share an order of what to study in a reference. This would also basically be how I would approach a full-on study process-wise. Here is the order I would use to study everything from one reference. As for the order of what to study in a reference, this would be similar to how I create my own illustrations, and it's also similar to the topics to study. Like this, I can use a process I'm used to, which enables me to not have to focus on what process I would like to use to draw what I see in the reference. Instead, I can use most of my focus on what's in the reference itself. However, experimenting with this from time to time can also be immensely helpful, as you may come across a new process you would maybe also like to use in your general workflow. This could enable you to draw faster, better, or just in a new, refreshing way. Overall, when I study from a reference, I tend to just focus on maybe the composition and shapes or forms, or in another case, maybe just the value and color as well as the shading and lighting. Only focusing on one aspect like line work or shading can also be very beneficial. And finally, I'll share an example of how I studied references for the topic of anatomy a while ago. Hopefully, this can give you a better understanding of what steps you could take to study from references. First, I choose a topic. In this case, this would be anatomy. After this, I broke the topic down into parts. Here it would be parts of the body. Next, I determined the steps I would like to use to study, how I would draw the body parts in my bodies. Then I went through the steps, noting and paying close attention to new findings and things I would like to pay attention to or change in the future. For anatomy, this would be paying more attention to only drawing in muscle indications depending on the body fat, meaning I only draw in the vertical ab lines for some characters, for example. In general, I want to keep this in mind while drawing any body part, that depending on the body fat percentage of the character in the final image, only some parts of the anatomy will be visible. Sketching in all the muscles can be beneficial too as well, as it helps me with going over my anatomy knowledge and with making sure proportions and relationships of different body parts work. This transitions into the second aspect, letting bones and fat influence my anatomy, rendering more. I shaded the anatomy based on the muscles for my studies, but in references I tend to see that bones and fat often change the look of how the body looks, so for more believable bodies it makes sense to pay more attention to this as well. The next aspect would be adding hue variation. For nice skin rendering, I like to add hue variation, which means including different shading colors and at times reflective light. Without it, the skin looks kind of bland. Adding highlights can be nice as well, as long as you don't overdo it. Finding out how many highlights to include to make it look believable is something I'm still working on and want to learn more about. Lastly, one very important realization I had when drawing the hands and feet: different hand, palm and foot sole colors. For dark-skinned people, the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet are lighter than the skin color, whereas for lighter-skinned people, these would be darker than the skin color. Those would be some of my learnings as I went through my studies. The last step would be to evaluate, reflecting on the questions: what do you want to change and what did you learn? For anatomy, this would include the aspects I mentioned for the previous step, but then I also added preparing a study topic like this more mindfully. I tried isolating each body part and studying it separately, but then I realized I would love to see how the body parts look combined. Combining them afterwards was challenging and looked off. In the future, if I ever study anatomy in this way again, I would start off with a full sketch of the body to make sure the proportions and relationships work, and then use that sketch to separate the different parts. This would transition into my next learning, not drawing anatomy as separate parts, but rather as parts of our body, paying attention to the connections and relationships to the whole body more. This is also something I like to apply to my general illustrations, drawing in the full pose or at least the full upper body to make sure the pose and anatomy of the body work. Drawing just one body part by itself can lead to a weird result, since you don't have the rest of the body to compare it to. Finally, I would add the lower body rendering. Comparing all body parts to one another, rendering-wise the upper body works better to me, but around the hip area downwards, everything gets more rough and less defined. I can tell that I myself am not too used to rendering legs, and to me this is apparent here. While I could improve on drawing and rendering anatomy for the whole body, leg anatomy rendering is something I can improve on, especially here. That's it for the learnings. As you can hopefully see from this, it can be helpful to for once look at this as you study, taking notes, but also after your whole study when you can get a bigger picture of everything. Those would be the steps I take to study from references. However, after this, the next step to really deepen your understanding would be applying your knowledge to new artworks. Just studying without using what you learned can lead to you not grasping how you can actually translate your learnings into your art, so doing this step is very important for maintaining your knowledge. Through applying it like this, you keep what you learned in mind. This leads me to the next chapter. This would be study methods. To begin with, here are 2 methods you can use to study from references in general, focused on a topic or what you are studying. The first one would be to start with a reference. This could be of a landscape, of a head, of a flower, and so on. For this, you then need to determine what you want to study in the reference you chose. This could be based on what you like about the reference or what you are interested in general. The second method would be starting with a topic you'd like to study. This could be values, eye shapes, hairline art, and many more. For this, you then gather references for this topic. Afterwards, you study these. It's very important to make sure that the references are well suited and depict what you'd like to study in a clear way. Overall, what tends to work well for me when studying references would be method 2, to focus on a topic and use multiple references to study it. However, method 1 can also be useful if you're not sure what to study. It allows for more experimentation, since only studying from one reference is not as big of a commitment. If you don't make the study very intense and in-depth, it can also be a nice break in case you are studying another topic for a long time and want to take a break from it for a bit, or maybe you want to freshen up your understanding of one topic you haven't studied in a while. Next, here are some study methods I have used when drawing from references. The first one would be just drawing what's in the reference, which could also be a tutorial video, and adding your own notes alongside this. The next method would be to create your own tutorial version of what you studied. Like this, you have to explain what you drew, which leads to a deeper understanding. The third method I would mention would be specific for colors. First, color picking from a reference and paying attention to how the hue, saturation, and value change using the color picker in the drawing software. Then try to use a similar pattern to this when drawing your own art, and like this you can learn to use colors that are similar to the reference. This method could theoretically also be applied for all kinds of different aspects. First, studying the reference and describing patterns by analyzing it, and then applying what you determined in your own art to learn to make use of it. You could even compare this to the original reference, describe what's off, and redraw or redo what you did to get a result that's closer to the reference. You could even repeat this step multiple times until you feel like you've studied the reference thoroughly. Next, I would like to share the method I used to first study the fundamentals. I created YouTube playlists for different topics. I would watch maybe 20 minutes of video material in a day, which turned into 2-hour study sessions. This is because I would first do a bit of repeating of what I studied the day before, then I would watch the videos and pause them often to take notes. Afterwards, I'd repeat what I learned in the video. In some cases, I'd also repeat what I studied on the days before after this, and in case it applied, I would add how what I learned today influenced what I had learned before. Finally, I'd also add creating reference boards with many poses for a daily drawing habit through which I wanted to study anatomy. You can also just create a big mood board and go through many references day by day, maybe focusing on another topic as well. After going through my own methods, I'd like to share some more ideas. For some of these, I implemented my own previously mentioned methods as well. Now here would be some more study from reference methods you can try. First would be breaking down subjects into parts. Choose a subject, like drawing hands, and focus on one small element at a time. For instance, study just the palm shapes or finger proportions first, spend your session observing and sketching only that part, and then move on to the next aspect in your next study session. Next, I would add timed studies. Set a timer for short, focused bursts, like 10 to 20 minutes, and challenge yourself to complete as much as possible. This can help improve your observation and quick decision-making skills. Combine this with a review session afterward to see what went well and where you struggled. As a third method, I'd include redrawing and refining. Take one reference and draw it from scratch. Then compare your drawing to the reference, identifying areas where you missed details or proportions. Write down these observations and redraw the same piece with corrections. After this, I would mention style imitation. Pick a piece from an artist whose style you admire. Instead of copying the whole piece, break it into components, how they shade, the way they handle lines, or their use of color. Study one of these elements in isolation and apply it to your own drawing. Then we have gesture drawing. Use references of poses. Whether it's a calm or expressive one is up to you. Poses in movement can be interesting as well. Create sketches that focus on the pose, flow, and movement. Drawing quickly here while using simple lines or shapes can help to focus only on this and not get distracted by the details in the image. This helps with drawing more dynamic bodies and building a sense of proportion. And finally, thumbnail studies. Practice creating small, simple compositions from references. Focus on the arrangement of shapes, light and shadow, rather than fine details. This is great for improving your sense of composition and overall visual storytelling. With all the methods I present, I hope you can figure out what works best for you. Try experimenting with these methods and notice how they affect your progress. You might find that one method feels effortless and doesn't challenge you enough, while another leaves your mind buzzing with new realizations. The goal is to push yourself just enough to absorb new concepts, but not so much that you feel completely burned out. Finding this balance is key to making steady and meaningful progress. Personally, I find it helpful to take notes as I do my studies from references. What helps me as well is to break down lines into concave and convex curves and focusing on shapes while drawing in general. Depending on what I'm studying through a reference, the method that works best may vary as well. Something I also noticed is that I can only study intensely for 1 to 4 hours a day, and usually only once a day. It's important not to overdo it. Learning takes time, and daily progress, no matter how small, adds up. Each day is an opportunity to learn something new, and by keeping this in mind, you can steadily grow as an artist. This leads me to my next point, another important topic when it comes to studying from reference. This would be the study time, or how you really study effectively. It's important that you have an effective study session, meaning you fully focus on studying. Not only will you save time like this, as you can intensely focus for only a limited time in the day, but also if you do it like this, it will pay off much more than long half-hearted study sessions. Study sessions tend to feel strenuous, but also rewarding at the same time. Regarding saving time, if you plan to use many references, whether it's images or videos, as a study method for a long time, I would suggest taking some time to get those references in batch. It saves time to take half an hour on one day to gather references for the next 30 days, instead of each day searching for something new and taking maybe 5 minutes for this. Then I would advise testing out some study methods and like this identify a study method that works best for you. You might spend 4 hours using a method that doesn't really challenge you and you leave the session feeling like it didn't have much impact. On the other hand, a focused 1-hour session of a study method that suits you can lead to a kind of overloaded mind feeling, which tells you that you have actually taken in new information. Using references isn't just about understanding the subject you're studying, it's also an incredible way to build your general observation skills. Think of tutorials as a shortcut where someone explains what they've observed and learned, saving you time. But when you take the time to observe references yourself and explain what you see in your own words, it can definitely strengthen your understanding. When you look at a reference, you're not just learning about the subject of the reference itself, you're also training your eye to spot subtle details and building a skill that applies to any drawing you create. Imagine it like 2 overlapping graphs, one long continuous graph representing your improvement in observation skills over time, and one shorter graph for each specific subject you study. Over time, as your observation skills improve, using references will become much easier. This creates a sort of momentum. Your ability to analyze references grows, which helps you learn different subjects faster and more effectively. There are also specific exercises you can try to sharpen your observational skills. For example, you can draw from a reference and then compare your drawing to the originals, focusing on the differences. Write down the differences you notice. This step helps you consciously identify areas for improvement. Redraw the piece, keeping these observations in mind. Overlay your drawing onto a reference to check your proportions, angles, or other details. One important thing to remember, tracing as practice, while not posting it as your own art, is not inherently bad if done thoughtfully. Mindless tracing won't help you grow as an artist, but tracing while paying close attention to what you previously drew differently can help you see where and why you went wrong. It's all about intentional practice. Another key idea is understanding the difference between studying to improve your skills and applying the skills you already have. While just drawing for fun can help you build muscle memory and improve gradually, focusing on deliberate study will help you improve much faster. For me, I can usually tell if I've truly focused on studying by how mentally drained I feel afterward. It takes effort to push your limits. Next, let's go over some bonus advice for your reference studies. Maybe throughout your studies you will find a few references you come back to from time to time, or ones you found particularly useful to study something. Saving these, whether it's on Pinterest in a folder on your device or adding a page to your favorites, keeping these types of references somewhere can also be very helpful. What can be very fun as well would be to take a reference of something you wouldn't usually draw and see how your own drawing of what's in the reference would turn out. This can give you insights in your own tendencies when drawing from a reference. Maybe that you like to use round shapes and outlines often, for example, or it can show you things you could improve on in the future. When drawing illustrations, I tend to combine references. It's not as much of a direct study, but being able to do this so you don't just copy-paste references, but are able to use references to create your own artworks is very helpful. Overall, as you study from references, being able to isolate one part and focus on that will already help you here, and this is what I will talk about in my next video, which I hope you look forward to. Studying references is more than just a practice. It's a way to connect with the world and grow as an artist. By staying curious, experimenting and reflecting, you'll find that every study session adds to your artistic toolkit. Progress takes time, but each step forward, no matter how small, matters. Let me know in the comments if any of these methods are helpful to you, or if you have a favorite study technique. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas. I have a Patreon where I share some full screen recorded process videos. If you're interested in that, you can check it out. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.